Hi, and welcome to another episode of Business Source, brought to you by Connecting Business, the show that gives you authentic conversations to help your business. There's no smoke and mirrors, just real people sharing their experiences. I'm your host, Lee Nightingale, and today I'm delighted we are going to be talking about teaching old dogs new tricks with Mark Gallen. Mark is founder and CEO of MG Sales Performance, whose aim is to help your salespeople to differentiate themselves. Mark, welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Lee. And may I just say that I do consider myself to be an old dog who definitely needs to learn some new tricks.
Well, I guess somewhere along the way, Mark, I'm sure you have, in order to sort of have a successful business, we have to invariably learn on a daily basis to stay current. But I'm delighted you're with us today. I'm sure I, for one, am going to learn a lot, and you've got some great insights and experience to share with the listeners and viewers. First of all, perhaps if you can share just a bit about MG Sales Performance, what it is you do and how you help your clients.
Okay, well, listen, first of all, thanks for asking me to come along. I haven't done anything like this before, but I'll certainly give it my best shot. So what do we do? Well, to kind of explain that, I think I need to talk about some of the challenges and problems that people face when they're trying to sell. So this is what I believe to be true, is that most people who are selling in a commoditized market, because nothing is really unique nowadays. So if you want to differentiate what you're selling, and that is you're trying to do that maybe through price or through service or even through the product features, that's a really tough thing to do. So we're all in that same boat, I think, to a lesser or greater degree. And then if you want to then sort of help people to understand how they go out and sell, where they can differentiate and stand out from their competitors, then you've got the training problem. And for many years, I think for a lot of companies, they've taken their people and they've said, okay, right, we're going on a training course, and off they go. And it tends to be a one-off event in a classroom, oh, maybe one, two, three, maybe more days, okay? And then off they go back to work, and you know, all the people who look at neuroscience will tell you that people forget stuff very quickly. You know, within a sort of 20 days, they can only remember, or 28 days, they only remember like 20% of what they experienced in the classroom. And then, of course, then the new people join the company, the new salespeople, but they don't get the training that the other people have that they've already forgotten by now. So that model was kind of broken. So when it came, and that's not to mention all the ancillary costs of taking people out of the workplace and not having them talking to customers. So in terms of what do, we help people with all those challenges that I've just described. And that is in the form of a product called MG Sales Gym, where, you know, rather than you going to a one-off event, what's going to happen is that you're going to go to a program of a minimum of 12 months. So you're going to have 12 months of learning. And whether you be a very experienced salesperson or quite new, you know, we'll tailor that experience to you. And that's a blend of videos, so short videos that you can watch whenever it's convenient to you, followed up by tests. You know, we call them quizzes, but they are literally tests that help you to remember and recall stuff. So memory recall, and that sort of test video thing is all about learning transfer, getting the new skills and behaviors into your brain. And then we go to application. Application is about you like having to go away and do little assignments, and then you upload them to a platform, and we review them and give you feedback. And then we bring you into a workshop. But those workshops are small groups, like 4 or 5 people, half a day, and we're simulating with you, and we're recording you and videoing you to watch you apply that. So that's a very long answer, Lee, to your question. But I suppose the thing was that there were all these challenges and problems and broken models that we said, okay, look, we're going to do things differently and do things better, so that people can go away with all the right skills, so they can differentiate how they sell. And if you can differentiate how you sell, you stand out, and you increase your chances of success. Otherwise, you're just scrapping around with, you know, I've got the same product as you, but I can sell it to you. I can sell it to you, Mr. Customer, cheaper, or, you know, everybody will say the same thing.
Yeah.
So sorry.
I've experienced that myself firsthand within companies that I've worked for previously. Both sort of listening to our salespeople at the time selling it and hearing them say and doing lots of talking and very little listening first of all, and then wondering why they're entering into a pricing war straight off the bat. And thinking about our competitors, they invariably will target our client base and just offer it 50% off. And it's how you handle that situation, right? If you're prepared for that kind of attack, if you like, you can overcome it. For example, we had a competitor called Blue Coat at the time when I was working for WebSense, and they were just basically quoting 50% off their price. And so I kind of got around that or combated that with, so Mr. Customer, what you've got there is someone who doesn't value their own product, and if they're prepared to just give it a 50% off now, was it really worth that first price they gave you? And what are you going to be paying next year? Feels very volatile to me. Feels very much, we just need to win your business now, and then you're in the lap of the gods when it comes to the year after. You've been a client with us for X number of years now. You've seen our pricing structure over that period. It's been very stable. It's increased by X% each year. We've always done you a deal. We were always there when you needed us. I think that sounds a lot more stable and something that you're looking for, right?
Sure, that's a tough conversation, isn't it? That sort of thing, that scenario. One of the things that I always like to, when I'm faced with that situation, I always like to say to people is, okay, so you've got my competitor here, and you've got MG Sales Gym here. If we were to match the price, which option would you go for? I think that's always a great question to ask people. So look, I'll reduce my price, but which one are you going to go to? And inevitably, because they wouldn't be having the conversation with you, inevitably they're going to pick you. They're going to say, "Yep, I'll go with you." And then the next question, which I love asking, is, "Tell me why that is then." And then they tell you all the reasons why they want to go with you versus the other competitor. And then, as you can imagine, the conversation moves into, well, that helps me to justify my pricing. But that's my favorite way of
I
dealing
like
with that tricky conversation.
Yeah, there's the other one, which is, well, of those things that you've said that you like about what I do, which bits shall we take out in order to get to the price that you're looking for? Because I can't include them all. And invariably they start looking at the list and like, well, I need that and I want that. And there we go. And you've got that differentiator there. So, wow.
And right now, people are more focused on price than ever, I think. That's the impression I'm getting. Because I've just been talking to a client this morning about they're going to go into their RFP season and they're going to be negotiating, and buyers are already conditioning them, looking for price reductions. So it's a tough market out there for a lot of people, but not everybody.
And speaking of tough markets, do you want to maybe just share what your traditional client base market is? Because I think that's going to add some context in terms of the severity of the challenge you've been having.
Well, don't laugh, but so for a number of years we've niched into hospitality. So our biggest clients are people like Marriott Hotels, the Intercontinental Hotel Group, IHG, airlines like Etihad, and so pre-COVID, we had a suite of international clients in China, the Middle East, and in Europe, and business was great. Business was good, and I took the advice a few years ago where someone said to me, "Look, you've got a niche," and we had a lot of clients there, and so we really focused on that sector, and we did very well. But when COVID came along, it's kind of fallen apart, but not completely. But yeah, it's been challenging to say the least.
Yeah, and certainly the events and hospitality business is just on its knees right now. I mean, I can't see an end to when it's okay to have hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of people all together. in some sort of safe way. Feels like it's a couple of years away, which is just so sad to think about. But
it probably is, Lee. But I learned a lesson a while ago. If you go back to 2008, I've always had a business coach, and I had a coach back in 2008, and I got to a point where I couldn't afford to pay the coach anymore. And so the guy just walked away from me, and he said, "I'll tell you what," he said, when it recovers up, come back to me." And I never went back to that guy because he didn't really support me. I mean, he didn't say, "I tell you what, I'll help you out for half the price or until things get better." There was nothing at all. But I remember that. So what I've done is I've gone to not every customer, but I've gone to those customers who I think are really going to need it, and we've offered them the support or continued support at no cost and no charge. And you might say, "Well, that's crazy. It's very generous." But I know what will happen is that things will recover. And those people, they will remember that. And while they're not getting the full service, they're because a lot of what we do is digitalized. It's online. There are fixed costs in the business already, so the capacity or the capability to deliver is already there. A lot of it's video based, and people are saying to us, "That's brilliant. That's fantastic." So, but it might be 2 years. But in the meantime, like most businesses, we're just going to have to pivot into another sector, which we're currently doing, in order to ensure that we've got that breathing space when things do come back.
And I think in hindsight, obviously a wonderful thing, but switching from that traditional classroom training model, which expires very quickly and gets forgotten, into this digital platform ability to sort of duck in, duck out, and have continuous and consistent learning, is something that's probably made a massive difference for you with this situation, because you haven't had to go away and think, "Oh, we were 100% classroom based and now we have no other offering." You thankfully have that base already with that platform and the videos, and of course people have had a bit more time now on their hands, whether it be they're furloughed or not furloughed. They're working from home, they're not traveling, they've got some more hours to do learning. It sounds like that was a great move for the business.
Well, I never had a crystal ball, but I knew that, and I go back to 2015 when we made that decision to transfer from a kind of traditional classroom-based training delivery to something more blended and more online, and it has put us in a good position. You're right. And it's interesting because we are talking to other training companies who are trying to transition at the moment. And we also have like spare capacity. So we're saying to people, look, if you want to come along and you can use our platform. And that wasn't an idea that I came up with myself. I must admit, I've only what I think we need to be doing right now, and I say this is my suggestion to people, is just talking to people and trying to kind of figure out what might be a better solution or what might be a different way of doing things. And so, I've been given some advice, and that advice is, look, go and talk to the training companies and literally, not rent out, but give them the option of using your platform in return for something else. And so, whilst it's, we've ended up with an online platform, that's great, but we're in a sector that's decimated, and now we're thinking, okay, we need to get people onto that platform who are going to use it and are going to appreciate it. But yeah, I mean,
licensing it out is is a great potential revenue stream for sure. And there's your first old dog new trick. Old dog being classroom training, but pivoting the business, and you've done it when you've recognised whether that was right intently or not, but you sort of how can we diversify? Obviously no one could have predicted we would be in this situation, but that there is a clear-cut case of keep doing what you always did and you'll keep getting what you always got. You've sort of said, look, yes, we're being successful, but if that were all to drop tomorrow, what else would we have? How else could we do this? And Ian Moyes, who I'm going to be chatting to
I
on
know
one of
Ian.
these.
I know Ian.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, he was saying the other day, and I don't want to steal his thunder, but more along the lines of, if you were to start the business today, how would you do it?
That's a good
What?
question.
Yeah. So forget everything in the past, but again, I don't want to dig too much into that. But
Yeah, no, that's a really good. I think that's a really good restart question.
yeah,
I mean, I don't know what the people who are viewing this are experiencing as well, but um, you know, I mean, when you asked me about a title for this session, you know, I asked you "Old Dog, New Tricks" because I just think it is all about new tricks. I mean, you know, I'm sure you've got, you know, things that happen in your business where you've had to kind of relearn something, or you know, or figure something out differently. I mean, but
yeah. One which is happening right now. So I'm very front end commercial sales, operations, relationship management, sort of, that side of the business. And I do know quite a lot of the technical stuff with the Salesforce platform, and I can do most of the day-to-day administration and analytics and stuff like that. But I've seen that we're starting to get asked more and more about sort of big data stuff and how to handle large bits of data, data cleansing, data migrations, and querying. And especially as the marketing automation, digital marketing, social media marketing, all that kind of stuff is massive now, and it's producing so much data that it needs its own platform. And then you've got the CRM system, which is the whole lead to sort of sale and beyond into cash and delivery. Bringing all of that together into that single customer view it is kind of, I can't use the word impossible, but extremely challenging to do it into one nice front end GUI system. So we are currently sort of pivoting and skilling up on using sort of SQL Server queries. So getting big, large databases of masses of data and being able to make sense of it through queries, so that when customers asks us to interrogate that database, we can give them good solid data to then act upon. So that's something
and
where,
that's driven by your own customers' demand, is it? Those sort of things.
well, kind of. So they haven't asked for it yet, but
Yeah,
I can see it coming.
coming. Yeah, and that's another thing. I think, you know, COVID has changed so much that, you know, the most frequently used word I hear is accelerated. I've just come off the phone with Marriott, and I think the guy must have used the word accelerated about half a dozen times. This, that, then that accelerated, and that, you know, so things that were already trending and they're already happening have just kind of accelerated. Um, I suppose that's just the way the world is. But when I reflect back to going into lockdown, and I remember saying to my team, "Oh, we'll be fine. It's just a couple of weeks, you know." And then it became a month, and then it became a
Yeah,
couple of months, and then, you know, I remember having a conversation with customers who were saying, "Oh, what kind of training do we need in a real strong bounce back economy?" And I was thinking, "Well, we can work that out with, you know." And it is just, you know, such a different world that requires, I think, and I know as I'm saying this, everybody knows this, but it's the agility, it's the ability to kind of really move quickly, really kind of not worry about doing different things. You know, the example you've given about, you know, thinking or anticipating what customers' needs are. And I do myself personally, I do find it a bit kind of overwhelming sometimes, you know, the way we've got to think differently. We've got to, you know, the old way isn't actually, perhaps, as you said previously, the right way.
mm,
Um, you know, life's very different and will continue to become different.
I know. Oh, well, it's difficult for business owners, leaders, management to commit to making those changes right now. There's no right or wrong answer, I think, on this, Mark, and that's because the uncertainty is just debilitating. Unless you've got millions in the bank, if
Yeah,
you're a small business and someone's harping on at you saying, yeah, well, it's going to bounce back, don't worry, look to the future, stay confident, pivot the business and all the rest of it, it's really, really daunting and overwhelming, because you're scared of spending money, because you just don't know how long this thing's going to last. But with that said, If you don't, and you focus all your attention on sort of staying as you are,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
likelihood is you're not going to stay as you are, because
No.
everybody's having to pivot. Everybody's having to change the way they do things, change in process, change in tech, change in people, change in platforms, how the product gets delivered. Literally, the world is going to come out of this differently, probably for the better. It's been a good reset, and a good opportunity for people to say, right, how was I doing before all of this? Let's imagine it's not happening. Where would I go next? What would I do? Do I have the intel and the data and the analytics and the insights
Yeah.
that I need right now to say, okay, where do we go now? Let's assume we're all okay. We've got some money in the bank. If we keep doing what we did, someone's just going to come around the corner and nick our business because they'll do the same thing cheaper, better, faster, more efficient, whatever. So it's that constant need, and that we need to have
You know,
to better everything.
I really understand and relate to what you're saying, in particular the kind of the feeling of being overwhelmed, etc. But um, I do think it's an attitude, and that might sound like a bit of a cop out. But I think if you
Mindset,
look
yeah.
at it, if you look at it and say to yourself, you know, it's a real opportunity to change things, and I've already changed things in our business for the better. And you know, I'm cautious about spending money and investing large amounts of money, but I think it is back to that kind of, well, if I was starting again, how would I do it? And you use the phrase intel, and I found it sometimes you can be paralyzed if you don't have information. So I spend my day
But you can also be paralyzed with too
too
much,
much
or if
information,
you don't know what
and
to do with that
yeah,
data,
I've
which
been
is
as well.
okay, right? Because
Yeah,
you start a business because you've either got a great product or a service where you can add
yeah,
value, solve a problem, and that's your focus. It's okay to recognize that you don't necessarily understand data analytics, and you're just looking at a spreadsheet with a load of numbers on, and it doesn't mean anything. But that's where partnering with somebody, bringing somebody in to help, that's just going to pay dividends. That money is going to be put to great use rather than just sat there staring at spreadsheets that you don't understand.
yeah, and I can relate to that. We've got technology in our business which I don't understand, and we have to bring in people to help us run that technology. But also, I I think it all comes down to having the right conversations with the right people, and that sounds easier said than done. But talking to people and trying to figure out what's going on. If you take it back to basics as well. So if you say, okay, well look, the market's changed, and if you think most businesses have a product or service that solves a problem, so you know the existing product or service I have, you know where is my market? I have this phrase, who is the right who for you? And I know I might be sound like I'm simplifying things, but it is about um, doing some market research, understanding, okay, where your market is, all the basic things like, what does that persona look like? Who's spending? Which sectors are doing well? Okay, do I have to then tweak and change my offering to match those sectors? And then it's the difficult part of going in, building the relationships, being discerning, finding the people, and that doesn't cost a lot of money. That is time intensive. You might need resource, but it's tricky and it's hard because, like most people, we were in a place where the business just came to us. So it was all about inbound sales, and
Yeah.
now it's all about outbound sales. One of your previous speakers, I can't remember his name, Naj, I think, he talked a
Niraj.
lot about Niraj. He talked a lot about that, and I'm completely in agreement with him. So you don't have to spend a lot of money changing your sort of sales strategy, but you do need to be very clear about who is the right who for you, whether you've got the right product and service for them, and then the whole business of getting to them, which is, I think, in some cases harder, but not harder. The people aren't on the end of telephones because they're not in their offices. They're all like at home, and it's harder to get hold of them.
Sure.
But you can be more creative with your approaches, and so that's the bit that I think we have to start with. And
Yeah, it's always baffled me, and I've worked within businesses where that's happened, where people have sat there waiting for the phone to ring and emails to come in, and because they have, and they're hitting target that way. And I'm like, can you imagine how much more you could be being more successful? I don't want to say more money, but yes, more money, if you actually picked up the phone and called people. And besides which,
yeah,
what are you going to do when that phone stops ringing, those emails stop
yeah,
coming in? So,
yeah,
I think we've all had to sort of, hey, we'll all hold our hands up. I'm sure at some point we get complacent. People call us, email us, and we sort of think, yeah, great, we're doing all right. We must have something somebody wants because people are
yeah,
calling us, and we lose focus on doing that. Well, I need to consistently keep filling the top of the funnel, otherwise the funnel is going to go dry. So
yeah. That's a very good point. I mean, I had I've got a coach, and we were talking about this matter the other day, and he said to me, well, there must have been a point when you did a lot of outbound sales activity. And I said, yeah, in the early stages of the business, there were lots of phone calls and emails. And he said, well, what happened? I said, well, we built some inbound sales and marketing pillars. Like we used to run events, and that was a great thing. Every quarter we would invite people to the event, and the event was about a topic that was interesting to them, and that was an opportunity to connect with people. And then we had like literally a magazine that went out to people. Magazine's probably a bit of a grand title for it, in the post, and people loved getting that. And that brought inquiries to us. But what we did forget, and this is like about, old dogs also forget things, is we forgot about all the outbound sales activity that we used to do. And okay, we used to do things on LinkedIn, but there was no way the volume that we did in the early stages of the business. And so I was talking to the coach, Peter, his name is, and he was saying to me, so you stopped doing that thing that was really effective in the early days that brought you all your customers. I went, yes, we did. We stopped doing that, and we did something completely different, which was, gave us a bit more time and everything.
mm,
But and his question to me was, well, why don't you kind of go back and do that on a frequent basis? So again, your previous speaker was talking about daily prospecting. I'm completely on board. We do daily prospecting. That's the only discipline, I think, that you really need to kind of never give up. And and here's a thing. So if I had my time again, I think I would never have stopped doing that. I would never have stopped doing that.
sure. Fascinating point there, Mark. And I think one thing you and I are absolutely aligned on is that quality of care to existing clients. Those people that have already committed to giving you money and have done historically, they absolutely deserve your undivided attention, now more so than ever. I mean, not that you should have stopped doing it anyway. Customer success, customer experience, whatever you want to call it, but renewals manager, account managers, there's so many different names for it these days. But keeping in contact with those people, checking in with them, seeing how they're doing, how's their business, are they using your product or a service? Are they getting value from it? How can they get more from it? Do they foresee challenges with continuing with their subscription? Talk to me. Let's keep the dialogue going. Being engaged with them regularly so that you can work with them, and ultimately being prepared to do something to help them through this period, because people are not going to forget when they come out of this who the vendors are and suppliers that have stuck with them and really helped them through this, because they invariably need our products and services now more so than ever, because the whole world is changing and the sales model is changing, and so with your line of business, that's going to be changing too. And you've got a load of salespeople who are used to being in an office bouncing off one another,
Yeah.
and now sat at home in the pajamas, doing this, trying to do the same job. So yeah.
Yeah, that's very
Wow.
true. And I think it's very important, going back to my previous comments, about looking after those people. I think it's about loyalty at the end of the day, and loyalty is a very hard thing to earn. But
Mm,
we will continue to support those customers, who at the moment can't pay their subscription, and we will do everything we can, and there will probably come a point where you have to kind of go, what that looks like 1 or 2 years, but I think in the meantime, I think it's the right thing to do. But also, I think when you're looking for new business, there's a temptation in this market to be desperate and really to be very keen to close a deal, and because you're literally, someone described to me the other day as it's like a dogfight, and I think there's a big risk that we become too desperate, and a buyer or the stakeholders within a decision-making unit sense that.
Yeah.
And we recently closed some business, and my colleague and I were at pains, this sounds ridiculous, at pains just to be calm and a little bit relaxed about it. We had to pitch a board of a sort of mid-size hotel chain, and you have to do it virtually as well. But behind the scenes, we were like, we so need this piece of business. We really do need this piece of business. But I reflect on my younger self, and I know that when you start getting too keen or too enthusiastic, and there's people out there who may disagree with me, but I think not being disinterested, but just taking a demeanor where you just don't send off those signals. And I'm pleased to say we won the business. I don't know whether we won it based on our emotional state, but it was definitely good for stress levels by just kind of going.
Well, it's interesting, and you and I have chatted about this, and that's about aligning your internal sales process, not based on how you think the sale should be going.
Yeah.
It's about how does the sale typically go within your industry, and the best people to talk to about that is the customer. Look at that whole experience, review what's happening continually to see if there's trends and patterns and changes in what happens there. So within Connecting Business, we are absolutely there to help our clients implement CRM, Salesforce, which involves the whole sales process from end to end. And all too often we're in a workshop and the sales leaders are saying, yeah, well, let's just change the stages to this and that, or oh no, wait a minute, let's do that and that and that. I'm like, are you thinking these up on the fly here?
Oh, Lee, you're on a hot topic for me here. I tell you, I really get cross when people do things like that. Sorry.
I mean, it's just, so I punt the question back and say, well, when was the last time you spoke to a customer, a friendly customer, and asked, is the way we sell in line with the way you buy? Are there any disconnects? Could we make the experience better for you? If you were us, what would you change? If you could influence what we do, what changes would you add? So there's that. So making sure that that's aligned, because invariably when you think about forecasting, and I'm sure you've seen this, Mark, you go into forecast meetings and sales rep thinks, yeah, waiting on the order coming in. And then you dig into it and you have a call with the customer. It's like, oh no, we're about 3 or 4 weeks off from yet. It's got to go through procurement, it's got to do this and that and get PO and blah, 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 all these different things. The salesperson's like, oh. And he's forecasting it to close this week.
I know what you mean. Hey, listen, I've got to ask you a question about this, because this is a really favorite topic of mine. So do you think that I've always been told that when people are buying and making a considered purchase, B2B and probably B2C, that there's probably 2 stages they go through, and one of them is where they ask themselves the question, can you guys prove to me that it's going to be okay? And the next one is probably, what will it be like working with you and your product, service, etc. So when you think about those 2 stages, do you think they should be reflected in the pipeline when we're measuring people's journey through a pipeline? And this is the thing that gets me every time is, should it be reflected in the CRM process as well?
Wow. We're limited to just a short period of time on this call, Mark. Um,
I
the,
might
the
open a
short
can of worms.
the short answer is absolutely.
Yeah,
You know, I think it's finding that balance between what data points do we absolutely need to have in order
yeah,
to understand what's going on, what's realistic in terms of are we ever going to get this information from customers, because we've had clients request us to put fields in the system, and then we've provided analytics and show that it's just sporadically being populated, so therefore it's
yeah,
no good whatsoever. It's you have to have consistent data in order for it to mean
yeah,
something,
sure,
and therefore if you need to ensure that you're going to get that information consistently, whether it be from the salesperson based on his gut feel, instinct, whatever, or asking questions, customer providing information back. There's technical fundamentals that you need to capture, and then the buying process from the customer. So that should be, once they're kind of interested in the product and you're sending a quote at that same point there, rather than just firing the quote off, ask the question, okay, once you receive this quote, what's the process? Who has to touch it? Who has to approve it? And then once it's approved, Mr. Customer, this is what's going to happen from our side of things. We'll send you an order form, whatever your process is. And then, Mr. Customer, tell me what then happens from your side, because I don't want to be picking up the phone and sending you emails, chasing you, wanting to know what's going on. Rather, I understand all of that now and make sure we're aligned internally with your buying process, so that we're not sort of chasing you all the time, and we can understand what's going on. So within the sales process, you need to find that balance between what you need to know and what the customer is going to give you consistently to make it mean something. So the sales stages, for example, really, I can't really see there being more than 5. When you get into more than 5, it gets more granular.
yeah. No, I'm with you on the 5 figure.
Yeah,
I mean,
you're generally qualifying. You've done a pre-qual because it was a lead in most scenarios, and you've done is that Mickey Mouse at Disneyland.com? No, it's not. Okay, it's a genuine person. I've had a quick phone call with him, done a demo. He's interested. Great. I'll convert it to an account, contact, and an opportunity. But now we need to flush out the requirements some more and dig deeper, do a technical demo, whatever it all may be. Then provide a quote. And then really from there, generally you are in negotiation. So is there ever really a need for the quoting phase, because you're just going to send it, and by default you're then in the negotiation from that point on anyway. And then you've got things like verbal commitment, where they've said, yeah, we're definitely going to buy it, we're just going to go through the motions our side. Bearing in mind what I just said earlier, you should know what those motions are. And that's all information you should be putting into your opportunity, because your manager is absolutely going to be asking those questions of you. Effectively, no matter what question they're asking you, why isn't this closed now? What's stopping this deal from going through to close one? What steps have you got to go through? Forget the stages. What information has the customer given you? What have you asked? To get that feeling of when this thing is going to close and why it's not moved on to the next stage. So having things like next step as a sort of single sentence in there to make your manager aware, okay, the reason why we're not in negotiation or whatever now is because of we're waiting on this. It bats off loads of questions and saves a lot of time in conversation with your manager. So do yourself a favor as a salesperson, put as much information as you can in there, because the minute you don't, that's when your time's going to get drained with questions from the sales manager.
You know what? That makes a lot of sense to me, and I think well, there's many reasons why deals don't go ahead, and I think what I'm seeing and hearing right now is that there are more stakeholders. Someone used the phrase the democratization of buying. There's more and more people involved in making a buying process, as there always is when money gets tight, because nobody wants to make a decision and take the risk. Okay, and that's a real challenge if you're a sales professional, because then you've got to kind of consider the individual needs and nuances and agendas that all those different stakeholders have. You know, when you're talking to somebody in HR, you've got to have your HR speak on, and when you're talking to somebody in finance, you've got your finance speak on. And I think that's tough, because, you know, you've got to kind of wear different hats, think differently, and at the same time, you know, keep all those like herding cats, so they all hopefully, you know, feel comfortable with you. And yeah, that just makes that pipeline even more complex sometimes, the more people that are in there. But you know, I'm a much smaller business than perhaps some of the businesses that you talk to, Lee. But you know, one thing that I've always found that really helps us is reflecting our pipeline, our stages, into the mind set of the customer. So I'm pretty convinced that most customers, most stakeholders, before they say yes, we'll ask that question: can you prove to me that it's going to be okay? And I think you get to a point in the process where you have to kind of address that. And that can be done through case studies, testimonials, videos, you know, where you can reassure them, and again, you can tailor that to them as well. And the second thing is that what would, you know, and you talk about the demo, what would it be like using the product or service? That's a really important phase as well. And then I call the next phase, where you're probably quoting, adoption, because then you're hoping that they're going to adopt, you know, and buy. But it is, I suppose, it's all semantics at the end of the day. But I just think that some of these labels that we put onto our sales pipeline don't really reflect the customer's position. And I think it works better if we, you know, I mean, I call one of them, I call assess, the customer's assessing us; test, the customer's testing us, you know, and early stages of interest. And so I could go on talk about this for ages, but I've got a book that I want to recommend later on. But I think right now, because the market's tougher and it's harder to differentiate, but we need to lead the conversation with typical, and I say typical, customer problems and challenges. So we need to be opening sales conversations by, I know that most people like you tell me that this is a challenge or this is a problem. And for salespeople, that sometimes is really hard to figure out, because they say to us, or say to us definitely, I know my customers, but we say to them, do you really understand what keeps them awake at night? Do you really understand that, forgive my language, the crap that they put up with, you know, when they're thinking about this particular topic? Because if you can connect with that, then you have a very different conversation with them. And this goes back to differentiation. Whereas, you know, let me ask you some questions about your needs, and then I'm going to present my product to you. That's a bit old school. You know, we need to be.
You've got to build that rapport, right? And sincerity and authenticity within the sale. And one thing that I think people forget is, when you do like an org chart, you know, you're in the deal and you're actually you kind of building out the org chart within your CRM system of who reports to who. That's one thing, but who influences who? Where are the relationships? Because invariably you'll find that the guy who's making the decision is not directly influenced by the person who directly reports to him. There's probably some guy further down here who he's got a brilliant relationship with. So you need to kind of uncover all of that. But speaking of books, Mark, normally I ask my guests to do 1 or 2 books. And I do 1 or 2, but I know beforehand you've prepped me, and you've actually got 3. So I'm not going to do one this week, sports fans. I'm going to open the floor up to you.
I hold the books. Have I been greedy?
That's fine. I mean, when you're doing so many of these, I don't want to portray that I'm reading a book every day, or certainly once a week. I'm doing my best, and I've got many books on the go. I think I'm up to about 6 or 7 different books on the go right now. So yeah, what books have you got for us, Mark?
Okay, sorry, just to
please do read the title and the author.
Okay, so this is the Chimp Paradox, okay, by Dr. Steve Peters. Lee, you've read this book, haven't you? Have you read this book? No, I'm confusing my earlier conversations.
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So why am I recommending this book? This book kind of talks about it puts in very simple terms about how you can manage your mind. Now, if you've been anxious, stressed, worried, you know, and all the other stuff, mental health stuff that can affect us all at some point in your life, or just COVID's getting you down, this is a great book. Okay, it just talks about what happens and it uses metaphors and a sort of characters. Well, and it's based on the chimp that sits inside your head and the human being. But this book has been enormously helpful to me, and I've pushed and promoted the book to our clients. You know, we've made training videos off the back of it. I think right now we all are feeling in probably a difficult place, and I think the book again would really help people, particularly people in sales. So that's my first one. The guy I used to coach used to support the GB team in 2012 Olympics. I had a lot of success with him.
Fantastic.
Second book, again, not a particularly recent book, and some of you might have read this or might even roll your eyes.
I know of a few people that have read it, but I'm not familiar with what it's about.
This book came out around about 2012, 2013. It's by the CEB, which stands for the Corporate Executive Board, I think. Yeah, it's a very credible
the Challenger sale.
Challenger
right?
sale. So essentially, after the 2008 financial crisis, you know, salespeople struggled for a long time, and they faced the problem I've described to you about commoditization. You know, same. You know, everyone's sort of selling a very similar product. So these guys, it's all research based. They did a lot of research into what, I can't remember how many salespeople they spoke to, but they also spoke to buyers as well. And they detected patterns of selling that weren't previously seen. And so the Challenger sale is a structured modular approach that you can take to selling, but it's all based around selling in a very different way. So you can't physically differentiate your product or your service. You can't, okay, you can reprice it. All right, maybe you can tinker around with the servicing, but here it's all about, it's how you sell. It's not what you're selling. The focus is on how you sell. Brilliant book, really lots of really good examples, a bit Americanized. Yeah, okay, I'm a bit of a sales geek. Well, I couldn't put it down. I still read it and still make notes on it and stuff, but that's very good. Sometimes it needs a bit of dilution to get out, you know, into kind of the UK market.
Right.
But it's about taking the bits that are really valuable to you. And I think now that, which was, it's not super popular, it came out and people were curious about it, but now I think COVID have accelerated that. The third book, and so I don't have it with me because it's actually by the side of my bed, it's a bit sad, and that is called Rehumanize Your Business. And that's by a couple of guys called, I'll spell their name, Ethan Beute, that's B-E-U-T-E, and Steve Pacinelli. But if you just Google Pacinelli, thank you very much. Google Rehumanize Your Business. Now that is all about the power of video in the sales process, which I'll make a prediction now. So at the moment, I think we're just getting to grips with it, although some sectors like the automotive industry have been using it for years. But I think in the next 2 to 3 years, video will be massive in the way we sell to people. And COVID again has accelerated that. But Rehumanize Your Business is by Ethan and Steve, who have been around and own a product called BombBomb. Not a very appropriate name, but it's a very good piece of technology. It's an app, sits on your iPhone and on your desktop, and it makes making videos and sending videos to people really easy. And I just love the app, and I love the book. And if you really want to understand about the power of video in the sales process, and this is the next big trend, then read this book. So sorry, fantastic. I feel like I've hogged the book.
Not at all. You know, I'm always looking for fresh new reading, or read the fresh new reading to me, even though there might be older books. And invariably, a lot of these books that were written to us, they were written so well and were so true, they still hold true to today. You know, I'm reading books from 2006, 2011, stuff that was predicting stuff that's happening now. Mark, I want to finish up by delving in just for a couple of minutes, conscious of time here, but you personally, how has this situation affected you? And do you have any hints, tips, tricks of stuff that you did that's helped you get through this this difficult challenge? And I appreciate that's a personal question, but really just trying to share some things with the listeners.
You talk about mental health impact.
Well, yeah, because obviously life completely changed, and we couldn't go out and do everything we wanted to do or were doing previously, and so we maybe took on new skills, new hobbies, things to entertain our brain, or fill our time. What popped up with you?
Well, I used to travel a lot, and now I'm stuck in our office in Bath, not going anywhere, and life is particularly dull and boring. And so, I try and chop up my day so I'm not stuck here. I do a lot of running, and always have done, and I'm probably doing more running than I've ever done before. But I do make a conscious effort of not, I do things in 90-minute chunks. Then I go off and do something, I'm gonna have a break. I've spent the last, I think, 20 years having lunch at my desk. Do you know what I do now? I go home for lunch and I sit with my wife and we have a nice lunch and I go back to work. And so I walk a lot more, stupid, simple things like that. But I am very conscious of long, monotonous days, can be very dangerous. I always make sure I have at least, 3 calls, sometimes 4 calls. I don't go looking for them, but a call might also be a webinar. So I always make sure that I have variety. Otherwise, I think it can get very dull and boring because the traveling, which I used to moan about, and now I miss it. So that, and from a sort of mental health perspective, I think I don't listen to the news in the morning. I used to be a Today program. Now I listen to Chris Evans, who I think makes life a little bit more cheerful, and I catch the news at the end of the day, because I think if you watch the news in the beginning of the day, it doesn't really set you up in a very positive mindset. So I wake up, music, Chris Evans, go to walk to work, 90-minute sections, the very most up doing things. But there are days where I feel like most people, a bit kind of fed up with the whole thing, and I just make sure I'm talking to people. So,
sure,
how about how I'm feeling, and I don't have any shame. It seems to people that today's a really shit day, and I'm frustrated by that. But also, when people do ask me how I am, I do talk about, what, I'm good. Although that sounds a bit crazy, because inside, I don't go to people, oh,
I know. It's very easy to do that for sure. Listen, Mark, fascinating stuff. We're aligned on a lot of our thinking, as I'm sure the listeners and viewers will hear and see. Congratulations on keeping the business going. Keep going away, plugging at it, my friend. You will come through the other side of it, I'm sure. You're doing what you can to pivot, stay strong, support customers in every way you can, keeping yourself sane by having a structured day, variety. These are all great tips for people. So thank you very much for joining us.
It's been my pleasure, Lee, and I've enjoyed talking to you. And forgive me if I've spoken probably a little too much, but I loved hearing the sound of my own voice like lots of trainers. So,
no problem.
No, it's been a really nice experience, and thank you for inviting me.
Absolute pleasure. So that's Mark Gallen, everyone, of MG Sales Performance. Do go ahead, check him out, and connect with him on LinkedIn along with myself. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Business Source, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.